morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
I've always really appreciated good horses, good dogs, and even good barn cats. They all play a part in a ranch couple's life, and this week one of our leading dog experts, Dean Audet, shares some fascinating insight into dog behavior. And he will also describe a day when he and a few other riders were trailing cattle through a thunderstorm.
It was about a half-hour storm, and the lightning was coming, and the rain was just pouring. And by the time all was said and done, a couple of the cows had actually been struck by lightning.
And Baxter Black draws a fascinating comparison to what's going on in the crazy world of politics today to what's going on in the barnyard.
Eventually, the barnyard pushed the presidential fiddling to the back of their collective minds.
And everybody, it seems, is watching the North American cattle market looking ahead to the rest of 2018, and the Rangeland News has some of the latest information for you.
Consumer demand over the last 2 months is behind the recent rise in meat animal prices.
Oh boy, I sure love the new CD from Eli Barzy and Doris Daly, and you're going to hear a song from Eli and a terrific poem from Doris in this week's Cowboy Poetry Spotlight. And on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, when a frustrated horse owner hands his horse over to a good trainer, he's often surprised to see that the horse gives the trainer very little trouble. And we'll look at why it happens that way. A very interesting story behind this week's classic Song of the West, and one of the leading dog behaviorists explains a lot about dogs right after the Bill Gans Band gets things rolling.
They came riding from the Northland, horses dry as a bone. Two pards named Duke and Dusty went riding on alone. From the south they came a-riding, pulled up at a played-out mine. Old Duke and Dusty were in two places at one time. These tales are told often of these old saddle pals, overlooking the mountains and dusty old corrals. They live on in the old songs, these tales of hope and glory. So here it is, my friends, the West of the story. When the past comes to the present, they keep riding on alone. The pards named Duke and Dusty, in legends both have grown. They just keep on a-going to keep the West alive. The truth is in their stories, the truth is in their eyes. These tales are told often of these old saddle pals, overlooking the mountains and dusty old corrals. They live on in the old songs, these tales of hope and glory. So here it is, my friends, the West of the story. We would all do much better with living day to day if we listened to these fellers and what they had to say. Old Duke and Dusty keep riding down that road, bringing strength to the people who love the Western cold. These tales are told often of these old saddle pals, overlooking the mountains and dusty old corrals. They live on in the old songs, these tales of hope and glory. So there it was, my friends, the West of the story. The West of the story, 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 the West of the story.
That's the west of the story from the great Bill Gans Band from Arizona. I think Dean Audet is to dogs what Jonathan Field is to horses. And Dean has lots of insight into dog behavior.
Well, Dean, cowboys and dogs have had a great relationship almost since the first cattle were driven up from Texas to Montana and Alberta, I think. Where did your first real interest in working with dogs come from?
Well, I grew up having lots of farming and ranching experiences when I was a kid, and my aunt used to joke that if she couldn't find me, she'd just whistle for the dogs and I'd come running too.
Is that right? Now, where was it that you grew up?
We grew up in Saskatchewan in a little town called Asquith, middle of nowhere up by Saskatoon. I can remember being a little kid looking out over the farm fields and driving that combine and thinking, you know, I think that this combine's just going to go right over the edge of the earth. It was so far, those fields. In Asquith, there's a post office and a granary bin, and that's all that's there. It's just all farming community.
Now, were there always dogs around?
There was tons of dogs. My uncle and my father always had packs of German Shepherds, and the fewest that I can remember was maybe about 6 or 7, and the most was maybe about a dozen or so. They loved their German Shepherds.
Were they just pets, or did they use them for?
Well, you know, they were pets. They were members of the family, but they were protection dogs. And, you know, German Shepherds certainly aren't cattle dogs, but they did their fair share of moving cows with us.
Right. And as time went on, did you specialize in one type of dog training, or were you sort of a generalist, working with everything from stock dogs to retrievers? Or?
Yeah, well, you know, over the years, as I really got into the dog psychology, I found more and more people in the cities were having a lot of problems with behavior issues. And with my passion for helping people and my study of the dog psychology, it was just a natural blend. So my specialty now is behavior issues with any kind of breed at all.
Are there certain breeds that are more prone to behavior problems than others?
You know, I get asked that question a lot, and the answer is no, actually. They don't really know that they're a certain breed. They just know that they're a dog, and they're either happy and in balance or they're out of balance. So once we as people understand what their balance formula is, it's much easier to keep them under control. Now, as far as the breed is concerned, they all have different tendencies. Obviously, the cattle dogs are a little easier to train to move cattle and sheep and so forth, and the German Shepherds and the Dobermans are a little easier to train to be protection dogs, and the Labrador Retrievers are easier to train to be hunting dogs. So they all have slightly different tendencies, and you can use those to your advantage.
Well, what does it mean when a dog is out of balance? Dean will explain that, and you'll hear a good song about a cow dog when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. A pretty good cowboy wrote a beautiful song as a fitting tribute to his favorite cow dog, and you're going to hear that in just a couple of minutes here. Right now, let's get back to dog expert Dean Audet.
When you say in balance, or a dog is out of balance, what's happening there?
Well, what's happening, if they don't have their needs fulfilled on a regular basis, they start to go a little bit crazy. It's just kind of like you and I, if we were cooped up in the house all the time and our wives never ever let us out of the house, it would just be a matter of time before they kicked us out.
Yeah, I can see that.
And just like we'd be driving our wives crazy, the dogs start to communicate and have conversations with us, or they're trying to have the conversations with us, that they're really unhappy. So they start to display, you know, barking or aggression or digging, or there's a whole list of negative behaviors that they can choose from. And when they start displaying that, they're trying to say, you know what, something is wrong in my environment, and it's our job to figure out what those triggers are and eliminate those triggers so that the dog can be stress-free. When a dog is like that, they'll live for 2, 3, 4 years less than they should. It's like you and I being at work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and not having a day off.
Just sort of in general terms, what are some of the things that need to be done to get a dog back in balance?
Well, one of my favorite stories, I can remember, you know, growing up ranching and moving cows, and we'd be in the saddle from 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning till maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. We change horses 2, 3 times a day, and we're exhausted. All we did was sit in the saddle. The horses are exhausted, and all they did was walk. And the dogs, mostly the Border Collies and the Australian Shepherds, they've been running. They covered 10 times the ground that we did all day. And at the end of the day, when we're sitting on the porch having a soda pop, they're bouncing around saying, let's play. And we're looking at them thinking, are you kidding? You still have energy left? So if we take that dog, move that dog into the city, into a house, in a fenced yard, and never ever let that dog out of the house or the backyard, they start to go a little bit insane. So, you know, exercise is a great part of it. And how we live our lifestyle on those farms and ranches and how we live our lifestyle today in the cities is a whole lot different, and our relationship is different with those dogs. So they, you know, one of the most important things is they need to get out and burn off some of that pent-up energy.
Old friend, remember when we got together? You were on the road and all alone like me. We hired on tending old Rink Goswick's cattle, sleeping in his barn and eating ham and beans. And at the sale in Chino Valley, I'd tag you work the alley. In all those rodeos, we pushed the calves and steers. You and I could move a herd. You always took me at my word. All those hours, the days, the months, the years, through the dust and rain, the bust and gain. You've been a true blue healer. You jumped every time I moved, and you walked every mile I rode. You've been a true blue healer. You're as solid as a rock, the best friend I've ever known. I'll tell you what, we'd done it all back in our younger days. We cut a lot of sign, covered lots of ground. The only horse I had that never liked you much was that Claybank Bay. But buddy, you're still here. We sold him by the pound. Boy, you could bust him from the brush like a quail that just got flush, and you could see a cow kick coming for a mile. And I still ain't seen you quit, even times when you got hit. Boy, you made me proud when I'd see you crack a smile. Through the flood and the fire, the blood and the wire, you've been a true blue healer. You jumped every time I moved, and you walked every mile I rode. You've been a true blue healer. You're as loyal as your name, the best friend I've ever known. You've been a true blue healer.
Yeah, you may know this. That is the guy that for a lot of years shod the horses that belonged to Garth Brooks, and actually accompanied Garth Brooks, opened for his show on his world tour a long time ago, Dan Roberts. Now, back to Dean Audet.
I often have people ask me or try to apply dog training principles to horses, and horses are much more my field of specialty than training dogs, although I've worked with some great dogs over the years. But I guess there's a parallel in a way. If you've got a high-energy horse on a high-energy diet that gets 10, 15 minutes of exercise a day and that's it, that can lead to similar problems. Would that be kind of a parallel?
Absolutely. There's many parallels between dogs and horses. You know, I don't claim to be a horse expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I firmly believe that horses and dogs either speak the same language or they can communicate. I'll tell you a fun story. You like stories, don't you, Hugh?
I love stories.
When I was a kid, we came walking out of the farmhouse one day, and there was my uncles and my cousins and I, and we walked out, and we were going across the farmyard to go do some chores, and we looked up in the field and we saw this beautiful stallion running full tilt across the pasture. And that's a beautiful sight all on its own. But what was neat was, one of the German shepherds was on his back. And we all stopped, and I was so glad that there was other people with me, because nobody would have ever believed me if I would have been telling the story and I was the only one to witness it. Later on, I was watching and observing the dogs, as I was prone to do, and I saw the horse walk up to a stack of hay bales. And the German shepherd climbed up on the hay bales and climbed onto that horse's back. And then the horse started to walk. The dog started to slip. Of course, the dog doesn't have a saddle, and the dog isn't sitting down, the dog is standing up. So the horse started to walk, the dog started to slip, and the horse stopped, the dog got reset, and the horse started to go. Now, we've all trotted on a horse, and we know how uncomfortable that is. That horse would go from walk to trot to gallop really fast and just go right through that so that they could get into this rhythm together in a gallop. That dog rode that horse more than we did. It was amazing. So the question that really occurred to me was, who asked, what was the communication? Did the dog ask permission to get on, or did the horse invite the dog up? It was an amazing example of communication to me.
Maybe that's where that idea for that photograph that's been kicked around for a long time, the Rangeland designated driver, came from. Have you seen that one? Of the guy that has obviously been at the bar till... Okay, Barb, we'll get that. He is just really wasted, and he can hardly sit in the saddle, and he's behind the saddle just hanging on, and the dog is sitting up in the saddle with the reins in his mouth. And it's not a painting, like it's a photograph. So.
Yeah, that's a great picture. I love that picture.
But when you think of that, you know, here's a horse that by nature is a prey animal, and a dog that is a predator animal. The way evolution happened, these are mortal enemies, and here they are cooperating and communicating. I mean, that's fascinating.
It is amazing. There's obviously an energy that's communicated between them, and if they're calm and peaceful and they're both balanced animals, then I think that's a really good example for us on how we can all coexist and be a lot more peaceful and happy.
Well, there's more to come from Dean Audet, including that amazing story about trailing cows through the lightning storm. And Baxter Black is next with a comparison between politics and the barnyard, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan with a little peek at politics in the barnyard.
Ladies and gentlemen and followers of cowboy humor, in a moment of weakness, I, Baxter Black, have written another book. I appreciate it. Its title is Scrambled Wisdom. Almost isn't is it? Which almost makes sense. Well, our offer does make sense. Only $19.95 plus shipping.
A solid gold guarantee.
Call 800-654-2550. Online at baxterblack.com.
Politics in the barnyard, a tale of incontinence and intrigue. The year the barnyard elected Billy Goat president, Miss Piggy accused him of piddling on her porch. The chickens, who were the voting majority, asked for an explanation. President Goat said, "You must trust me. I never piddled on her porch." "Come smell my porch if you don't believe me," insisted Miss Piggy, but the chickens refused because they'd always been jealous of the pigs due to their first billing and bacon and eggs. Mrs. Goat, the first nanny, defended him also and would not sniff Miss Piggy's porch. Well, it wasn't long until similar accusations were uttered by others in the barnyard. Miss Bunny complained he piddled on her hutch. "Come smell my hutch if you don't believe me. It smells strongly of goat." President Goat again spoke to the chickens. "You must trust me. I never piddled on her hutch." Well, his support group, known as the Rooster Boosters, accused Miss Bunny of lying and called her hutch trash, but they would not smell her hutch either. Miss Hugh accused President Goat of piddling in her paddock. "You must trust me," Billy Goat intoned. "I never piddled in her paddock." The rooster boosters surrounded President Goat and snorted loudly to the chickens. "Don't believe the ewe. She's just like the bunny and the pig, and whatever you do, don't smell her paddock." Then a cute heifer was caught in President Goat's pen. She smelled strongly of goat. "You must trust me," said Billy Goat, wagging his finger at the chickens. "I never piddled on the heifer." Miss Heifer said yes, he did. "Smell my hooves." But no one would. The chickens nodded as solemnly as a chicken could nod, and believed him. The rooster boosters put up a raucous defense, accusing the heifer of entrapment and calling her a liar. Many domesticated witnesses were called who saw President Goat with Miss Heifer. They were called naive by the rooster boosters. The chickens soon tired of the hoorah and went back to pecking the dirt. Eventually, the barnyard pushed the presidential piddling to the back of their collective minds, and then one day a migrating snow goose landed in the barnyard. It was welcomed by all the four-legged citizens and most of the chickens. "Gosh," said the snow goose, wrinkling his nose, "why does everyone smell like goat piddle?" "What? What are you talking about?" they asked in unison, sniffing the air. "What? We don't smell anything." This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan. Thanks for listening.
We would like to invite all our customers, cattlemen, and friends to the 37th Annual Select Charolais Bull Sale, March 2nd at 1 o'clock at the Innisfail Auction Market. 115 Charolais bulls, yearlings and 2-year-olds. View the catalog online at futurefarms.ca or bid live at DLMS. The Marshalls and Shuttleworths look forward to seeing you Friday, March 2nd. Call Daryl or Alan to view the bulls.
Alan Moberg has had a string of hits back in the 60s and 70s, wrote and recorded some terrific songs, and he's, of course, well known for his song about the Williams Lake Stampede. And he's been kind of a fixture at the Kamloops Cowboy Festival over the years, and he just released a brand new CD with a bunch of new original songs like this one, Prairie Reunion.
It's been a long time coming, but at last here we are. I think great-granddaddy Clayton would be glad to see how far we have come through the hard times, even tragedy. Though I may not have met you yet, we are family. From Ontario to that sod house on the prairie, like the old Milk River flows, we are family. We have traveled on our own, but today we're not alone. May this day be remembered, together from now on. There were 4 Markel sons, took the call and went to war. Though none were lost, they paid a cost for what they're fighting for. Uncle Roy, the prairie preacher, came to visit and he'd pray. This man had a lot to do with where we are today. From Ontario to that sod house on the prairie, like the old Milk River flows, we are family. We have traveled on our own, but today we're not alone. May this day be remembered, together from now on. Hats off to our mothers, who always did their best. Let's carry on their legacy, stand up to the test. We are part of a story that is still being told. Pass the pen to our young ones, we are growing old. From Ontario to that sod house on the prairie, like the old Milk River flows, we are family. We have traveled on our own, but today we're not alone. May this day be remembered, together from now on. It's been a long time coming, but at last here we are. I think great-granddaddy Clayton would be glad to see how far we have traveled on our own. But today we're not alone. May this day be remembered together from now on. May this day be remembered together from now on.
How about a weekend pass to the 22nd Annual Kamloops Cowboy Festival, March 15th to 18th, 2018. A terrific list of entertainers, including Gary Prescott.
I once rode with the best of the cowboys back in the days of my youth.
Brian Salmon.
So who would pack the lantern? There are some buckaroos that would pack it tall and proud just like we need to do.
Tom Cole.
Out on the plains, an old cowboy sings a song to his herd.
The BC Cowboy Hall of Fame inductions, dinner shows, evening concerts, a wonderful art and gear show, the Art of the West show and sale, workshops, and everything from guitar picking to saddle making. The best place to get all the details is bcchs.com, and for tickets, call 1-888-763-2221.
Now the news of the Rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
The North American cattle industry has been integrated for a long time. What happens in the U.S., of course, has a definite impact on Canadian producers. Here's Rod Bain with a market expert to look at how steer prices are shaping up so far this year.
Year-over-year forecast in U.S. meat production continue to increase per the Agriculture Department's January report.
When you look at year to year, we're talking about increasing overall meat production by more than 3 billion pounds, so you might expect a little bit of softening of prices year over year to go along with that.
Yet as World Agricultural Outlook Board Chair Seth Meyer points out,
demand has remained pretty good, so the year-over-year price declines aren't very large.
So, for example,
we do expect a decline of about a little over $3, for instance, on the steer price. However, we added $1 to it this month, so now we're talking about $118.25 a hundredweight, just from the strength we've observed and our continued expectation that that strength will continue into the first half of this year.
Likewise, hog prices increased a quarter from the previous month, and broiler prices rose 2 cents from December. Meyer says consumer demand over the last 2 months is behind the recent rise in meat animal prices. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Well, if you are interested in watching the 2018 World Equestrian Games, Tyrone, North Carolina, September 11th through the 23rd, hey, that's when we'll be on our Spirit of the West cruise. NBC and NBC Sports Network will have combined 15 hours of live coverage, and the live coverage will also stream on NBCSports.com. And the FEI World Equestrian Games are held once every 4 years in between Summer Olympic years. Features the World Championship for 8 equestrian sports: show jumping, dressage, eventing, reining, combined driving, vaulting, endurance, and para-dressage. Well, the legendary, long-lived Sons of the Pioneers have announced that Dusty Rogers, that's Roy Rogers Jr., and John Fullerton will be joining the group. Trail boss Tommy Nally said, "We are lucky to have these two very talented individuals who have such a lifetime commitment to the music of the Pioneers. We've always had a direct musical link back to the group's beginning, and now we have a personal one with Roy Rogers Jr." Well, there's been some heartwarming work done for Alberta and BC ranchers who've had their herds, pastures, fences, and buildings devastated in last summer's wildfires. And for folks in Alberta who would still like to support the cause, you can contact the Hilda Fire Relief Fund, Andy Krisheneman, at 402-581-9760, or the Waterton Keno Fire Relief, Sherry McKenzie, at 403-627-5676, and they can tell you how you can contribute. And for folks in BC, the Canadian Red Cross is offering direct assistance to BC families and communities impacted through the wildfires, and you can contact them toll-free at 1-800-863-6582, Monday to Saturday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Time. And also a book I thoroughly enjoyed reading, The Cowboy in Me by Robin Langford, has already raised a lot of money for ranchers facing wildfire devastation in BC. At this point, the book is available at Chapters in Kamloops, 100 Mile Feed, and The Nuthatch and 100 Mile House, Open Book in Williams Lake, Books and Company in Prince George and Quesnel, and Spruce Capital Feeds in Prince George. And if you can't get to one of these locations, you can email Rob at robinlangford1@outlook.com. He would prefer that the books are purchased at a store because it costs almost as much to send one out in the mail as it does to send out a case of them. Coming up at the BC Livestock Co-op Yards, February the 19th, the Okanagan Falls regular sale, February 20th, the Kamloops regular sale, March 15th, the Williams Lake regular sale, and March 16th, regular sale in Vanderhoof. And there are a lot of special bull sales coming up as well. You can get the details at bclivestock.bc.ca. And meanwhile, over at the Innisfail Auction Market, regular cattle sales every Wednesday, 2-horse sales a month, and pre-sort sales Mondays. Calves for the pre-sort sale are weighed on Sunday. Call ahead to book your calves at 403-227-3166. And that takes us down to the final item. And we are so glad, Billy and I are, that we got away from the West Coast before that earthquake hit the Gulf of Alaska a few weeks ago. I could just imagine what could have happened if we were still there. There would be a knock at the door, and I'd say, "Who's there?" And a voice would say, "Sue." And I'd say, "Sue who?" And the voice would say, "Tsunami." Thanks, Alan Moberg, for that one. And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, I'll look at why a trainer can take over a horse that's giving the owner a lot of trouble, and the horse will respond much better to the trainer. And Dean Audet has a true story about driving cattle through a thunderstorm when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. We will look at a common situation between frustrated horse owners and why good trainers can help quickly on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, coming right up. But first, the 17th annual Spirit of the West Cruise will be something unforgettable. My wife Billy and I will be hosting a big group of ranchers, farmers, horse and cattle folks, and Spirit of the West listeners for a trip I know many of you have had on your bucket list for a long time. September 16th, 2018, we will sail out of Quebec City and cruise Canada's maritime provinces in all the glory of the fall colors, including stops in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, Sydney and Halifax, Nova Scotia, St. John, New Brunswick and the Bay of Fundy, Bar Harbor, Maine, Boston, Portland, Maine, and Cape Liberty, New Jersey, with an optional stay in New York City. Now, just for the Spirit of the West group, we have a tour of a cattle operation in Nova Scotia. We'll have all our great Western music concerts and sing-alongs, and we'll be swapping lots of ranching stories. And we'll have a lot of special activities just for our group. You'll find more details on the cruise section of our website at hugh-mclennan.com and on our cruise Facebook page, and you can always call the toll-free number 1-800-530-0131. Oh boy, this one is really filling up fast. But we might still be able to squeeze you in. And man, are we going to have a great cruising cowboy band with bass player Uncle Mike Daggert, fine fiddle player Don Howard, the always great vocalist and guitar player Ed Peake, and special guest, the one and only Louis Big Rig McIver and his banjo. All the details at 1-800-530-0131.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
Urban Tack and Western Wear is Canada's largest Western retailer with over 60,000 square feet of everything Western. This Western wonderland has an endless variety of tack, boots, jeans, and outerwear with new items arriving daily. With over 1,000 saddles to choose from, you're bound to say Urban's is totally a unique place to shop. The kids will love the styles. You love the quality. Urban Tack and Western Wear off exit 305 on Highway 2 by Crossfield, open 7 days a week, online at urbans.ca. If a horse is being a problem, the owner is usually kind of excited to hand him over to a trainer, and it's not that the trainer can do magic. but he can do something different than the owner can do. And the reason for that is that the trainer doesn't have a complicated relationship with the horse. Now, the trainer can step in and show confidence and teach communication and enforce consistently the way the horse is expected to behave and respond to the trainer. Within a very few minutes, the once frantic horse can stand quietly with his head down, showing he's relaxed when a leader is present. What happens when the trainer works off the lead? Well, first, he teaches the horse that there are boundaries, and he is not to infringe on the trainer's personal space. He may not move into that space. He may not look around to find something to worry about. With the trainer outfitted with a rope, halter, and a long lead, and a horseman's stick or flag, the horse soon learns where he can and cannot be, and in just seconds, he'll learn that he can't come into the trainer's space, and if he does, he'll be moved away. When the horse is asked to stand still and calm down, he must stand still without moving his head, again, to look for more distractions to be worried about. And, you know, being a good leader doesn't mean being harsh or aggressive or an ultimate dictator. If you set your expectations and you're consistent, you shouldn't have to be overly aggressive. And if you expect your horse to stand still, correct him each time he takes a step or moves his nose. And he'll quickly learn just how far he can and can't turn his head, and he'll know what you're asking. This consistency is so important, and often that's what's been missing when the owner has been working with the horse, and the horse doesn't really have a clear idea of where the boundaries are, and so his insecurities tend to grow. But if a horse has been allowed to push into you, that is a dangerous behavior. You must use the pressure required to move him from your space, and as his respect for you develops, it'll take less and less pressure to position him where you want him, and make sure that you pay particular attention to how you position his feet. If your technique and your timing is right, you can be standing on the ground and not even touching him and have him position each individual foot right where you want it. And that's the horse training file. Something else our horses really enjoy is that daily feeding of Hoffman's horse ration. Find out more at hoffmanshorseration.com. Mark your calendar for Ulrich Herford's 12th Annual Bull Sale, Tuesday, February 20th, 1 p.m. at Baylog Auction, Lethbridge, Alberta. On offer approximately 47 top-quality bulls and 12 terrific heifers. You can see them at ulrichherfords.com. These bulls are the sons of industry leaders. For more information, call Peter at 403-625-1036. That number again, 403-625-1036. Ulrich Herfords, specializing in light birth weights with great performance plus remarkable cows. That's February 20th, 1 p.m. at Baylog Auction, Lethbridge, Alberta. Looking for an ideal Christmas gift or stocking stuffer? How about a weekend pass to the 22nd Annual Kamloops Cowboy Festival, March 15th to 18th, 2018. A terrific list of entertainers, including Gary Prescott.
I once rode with the best of the cowboys back in the days of my youth.
Brian Salmon.
So who would pack the lantern? There are some buckaroos that would pack it tall and proud just like we need to do.
Tom Cole.
Out on the plains, an old cowboy sings a song to his herd.
The BC Cowboy Hall of Fame inductions, dinner shows, evening concerts, a wonderful art and gear show, the Art of the West show and sale, workshops, and everything from guitar picking to saddle making. The best place to get all the details is bcchs.com, and for tickets, call 1-888-763-2221. Eli Barzy and Doris Daly have just released a nice new joint CD, and you'll hear one of Doris's fine poems from it a little later, but right now, here's Eli with Share the Ride with Me.
Someone rode the trail with me today. We headed west toward a blazing sun. Someone to ride the river with and say, let's cinch up tight and make it a good run. Your handshake made my own the stronger. Your loof was graced, true and tried. You made the music last a little longer and made the trail a sweeter one to ride. Someone rode the trail with me today. we headed west toward a blazing sun. Someone to ride the river with and say, let's cinch up tight and make it a good run. He rode ahead before we said goodbye. I turned to give a wave and he was gone. Better hand might ponder on the why. And I say, ride on, good friend, ride on. Someone rode the trail with me today. We headed west toward a blazing sun. Someone to ride the river with and say, let's cinch up tight and make it a good run. Upon the sky when love and life collide. Ride on and know your memory lives on high. Someone rode the trail with me today. We headed west toward a blazing sun. Someone to ride the river with and say, let's cinch up tight and make it a good run. Let's cinch up tight and make it a good run. Na, 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 na,
And now back to one of the West's foremost dog behaviorists, Dean Audet.
And you were telling me earlier about a cattle drive you were on with a group of herding dogs in southern Alberta. Can you go through that when it started out when the sky was clear and the day was nice?
Yeah, we thought it was going to be a nice summer sunny day, and it was a nice hot day, and we were heading from the Cardston area towards the Pincher Creek area. And it reminded me a lot of a movie. You know, Hollywood, they like to speed up the clouds as they roll off the mountains. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened off those famous Pincher Creek mountains. There's nothing to stop those clouds when they roll down. And they were black and tumbling, and they were coming fast. And we knew that we were in for a storm. There wasn't a stick to hide behind, so everybody quickly threw their slickers on and hunkered down. We got the herd in nice and tight. And the dogs knew. They just knew. They felt the electricity of the storm coming, and it was like a war trying to keep those cows all in tight. They just wanted to scatter and run, and it was about a half-hour storm, and the lightning was coming, and the rain was just pouring. And by the time all was said and done, a couple of the cows had actually been struck by lightning. And we were amazed. We went and inspected the carcasses afterwards, and they looked like a couple of charcoal logs that had been sitting in the fire overnight, and you touch them and they just fell apart. And we all got down on one knee and said our thank yous, because we realized that we were on horses with metal horseshoes, and we were the tallest thing in that pasture that day, and there wasn't a single one of us that was hurt. And we were real grateful that we didn't have to ride home and tell somebody's wife that their husband was barbecuing out in that field that day.
Boy, that reminds me of 2 or 3 great cowboy songs about that very thing. Oh,
yeah.
Gosh. Yeah, just amazing.
It was scary.
Boy. Well, Dean, thank you so much for sharing some of these stories from this wonderful world of dogs, and really appreciate the time you took to do this, and I hope we can do this again sometime.
Great to spend the time with you, Hugh.
Still to come is this week's classic Song of the West and the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. This classic song of the West has been around for so long that no one seems to know exactly how it originated, but it's been sung by a lot of cowboys like me who maybe thinks riding a mare to do ranch work is just fine. The origin of the song, according to some historians, comes from the line of an old Irish air, "I'm alone in Donegal in the wind and hail." In some parts of Ireland, Donny means daughter, and maybe there's a vague connection to the gender of a cowboy's horse. In my copy of Cowboy Songs by John and Alan Lomax, all it says is this song was heard being sung by Mrs. Louise Henson of San Antonio, who learned it from her uncle in Oklahoma. Some historians debate about whether the song is about the cowboy's wife or girl, or about his horse, and to me, it seems pretty obvious it's about the horse. I've got a bunch of great versions of this one, but this is my favorite, from Rena Randall and the Due West Trio.
We're alone, Tony Gal, in the wind and hail. Gonna drive these doggies on down the trail. We'll ride the range from sun to sun, for a cowboy's work is never done. We're up and gone at the break of day, driving the doggies on their weary way. Rain or shine, sleet or snow, me and my Donny gal are bound to go. Yes, rain or shine, sleet or snow, me and my Donny gal are on the go. The cowboy's life is a dreary thing, for it's rope and brand and ride and sing. Yes, day or night, in the rain or hail, stay with the doggies on the trail. Tired and hungry, far from home, I'm just a poor cowboy and bound to roam. The starless nights and lightning glare, danger and darkness everywhere. Swim in rivers along the way, pushing for the North Star day by day. Storm clouds break, and at breakneck speed we follow the steers in a wild stampede. Over the prairies lean and brown, and on through wastes where there ain't no town. Bucking the storms, wind and hail, pushing the longhorns up the trail. We're alone, Donny gal, in the wind and hail. Gonna drive these doggies on down the trail. ever done. We're up and gone at the break of day, driving the jogies on their weary way.
Well, I was just looking over the lineup for the Kamloops Cowboy Festival coming up in March. My gosh. Gary Prescott, Alan Moberg, Tom Cole, Brian Salmon, Chris Isaacs, Ben Crane, my Western Spirit Band, and so many more, including the Canadian treasure Doris Daly. And here she is.
Everybody's different. Diversity rules the day. Still, I slap my head in wonder at the housewives of L.A. They're bosomy and Botoxed, voluptuous of hip, and I don't understand why anybody gives a rip. They're brassy and they're bossy, over-blinged, uber-noisy, and please don't get me started on the housewives of New Jersey. A spree at Neiman Marcus and they're rolling in the clover, cleavage, like the 23rd Psalm. Their cups runneth over. Flirting with a jailbird sugar daddy millionaire, and here's my biggest question, why does anybody care? If you want me as a viewer, scrap those superficial wives and point your TV camera at the gals who have real lives. Farm wives tough as tigers, ranch wives strong and brown, and the ones I know the best, the real farm wives of my hometown. When I was just a baby, when TV was still a dream, these farm wives got together just to laugh and let off steam. Strong and tough and funny and steady as she goes, and they never shopped at Tiffany's or wore designer clothes. They could drive a tractor, fix a fence, load and bale and stack, and bake 6 rhubarb pies with one hand tied behind their back. They had soirees, they had setbacks, skies of gray and skies of blue, and the farm wives of Alberta always got each other through. They buried husbands, buried kids, shared laughter and shared tears, and they've been there for each other for more than 60 years. So when it comes to housewives, you can keep your bling and brass. It's to farm and ranch wives everywhere I raise my fluted glass, but specially to the women you won't see on TV, my mum, and all her farm pals who still inspire me.
Well, thank you so much for making the ride this week, and I sure hope you can join us right here next week at the same time. And, of course, many thanks to our great support crew. That's Mark and Kathy McMillan. And if you need tractor parts any make, any year, just go to Mark's page, bctractorparts.com. Oh, yeah, and be sure to see the latest issue of Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine. You can subscribe online at cowboycountrymagazine.com. or call them at 1-800-943-7336. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.